Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting podcast. We have an amazing guest for you today. He has a wealth of industry knowledge and expertise. He's an author, a speaker, a licensed NLP practitioner. He's a behavioral coach. He even comes from the music industry. Please help me welcome Julian Sado, EVP of Learning and Development at EPM. Julian, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, it is great having you. I appreciate you being on the show. I know you're out and traveling. First of all, since you're out and traveling, tell me what it's like to be back in front, having a lot of live meetings and personal interactions.
It's amazing. Human nature is about connection. So the pheromones you pick up from people, the interaction, the laughing, the shaking hands, all those things just do something to the body that we kind of forgot about and lost for almost 2 years. And so it's amazing to be out again. At first, it's a little draining because you're not used to it, but that muscle gets back really quick and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So yeah, it's great.
Well, even the things you forget that you used to always pack. I used to have all of my cords and chargers in the bag, and then the first couple of times you went, you're like, oh man, I forgot this charger, and where's that? But so it is great to be back live. I hope to see you at some of the upcoming events. Tell me, what are you seeing in the industry? It's kind of a changing time, right? We know rates are fluctuating. We know some people are kind of panicking this market. Other lenders are leaning in and gaining market share. What are some of the things you're seeing in today's mortgage market?
I see a lot of the same rhetoric. We look for security by listening to the experts and asking them, what do you think is going to happen? And what we're doing is looking for security and some kind of security blanket, if you will, some kind of reassurance, when really we've been here before. We know the market it fluctuates. We know, and the smart man is one who plants and, tills his garden before the storm, right? So we should have been thinking about this a long time ago, and we should have known it's coming. And those who had not are kind of relinquishing all of their debt, if you will, which could be employees, could be, the underwriters they paid over amounts of money to. So now they're just, kind of cleaning house so they can save money. So I see a lot of people trying to find a way to survive and kind of keep their books in the green. And I think that is probably the biggest thing I see right now is just an exodus of support staff in the mortgage industry.
Yeah, I would agree. And to your point, dig your well before you're thirsty, right? It's critical to be prepared. And I think what a number of people the mistake they're making is as they start shedding all of those employees, as they stop doing marketing, as they slow down on their sales, in my opinion, most of the time they're putting an anchor on their ankle and they're just going down faster instead of leaning in. And I've talked about this before. If you look, and the current market conditions are nowhere near what they were in 2008. And you and I went through those challenging times. And
oh yeah.
The lenders that were the top dogs back then aren't the ones leading now, and the ones that leaned in 2008 are now some of the largest lenders in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can say right now, here's the thing that, leaders should think about. We have a legacy mindset. We think from production, but our new world is not about production. It's about the interaction. It's about the culture. It's about how people feel about being in the fight with you. And it's, as you see, when people live for the money, then they jump for the money. And so we have to find a culture that is living through the trial together, and that's going to create a company that literally stands strong. And I think that a lot of companies, if they were to turn around and start thinking about how they represent themselves from a leadership perspective and really understand that, you'll see a lot of people lean into the struggle with them versus just, I'm leaving because, and I think that's a big part of our success is really finding people that have the knowledge in the business and they have some history in the business, but they also have good practices that follow with that. And we are not just hiring people just because they know the business, but they have the great practices that go with it.
You just made so many really good points there. I hope people were taking notes. I'm going to try to chunk it down a little bit. The first thing you talked about is culture. And I think sometimes people gravitate to that and it's a buzzword or anything, but I think when you invest in people, when you actually grow your people, when they're in the fight with you and you're side by side with them, great cultures can give a huge competitive advantage when developed correctly.
100%. We did this at EPM. I literally hired people that had no mortgage experience, and had them come into the office live, which was a new thing for us, right? It was great. They came in every day. We taught them mortgage basics for 2 weeks. And here's the thing, Michael, we didn't use PowerPoint and just walk through, click, click, click. We did adult learning. We used them to teach themselves. We had them go and find information, then do teach backs to each other. One topic 4 to 5 times in different ways from themselves. Then we went and had the company itself come back and teach. We had underwriters come in and teach. And then they had to go and create teach backs on what they learned from the underwriters. Underwriters weren't trainers, but we chopped it down in little segments. And now what you have, if you have dedicated people that are new to the industry that pretty much know how to underwrite, they're junior underwriters, and now they're holding the existing underwriters at a higher standard because they're coming in and doing the job better than some of them. And so that is creating a culture of, hey, we're in the fight together. You're my mentor, and the mentor has to step up to the game. This is what a culture is built on, is by themselves, not by the leader saying, you guys need to have a culture. It's the people in the trenches that make the culture. And this is what we did. We drove the culture through the trenches.
Well, I love that. And I think talking about the learning it's critical in today's market, with it constantly changing and shifting, whether it was from refi to more purchase. And then when you're in purchase, is it more HELOC? Is it more cash out refi? Having people who can learn and adapt is critical. So tell me a little bit more about your approach to training. I love what you were talking about. Instead of just a PowerPoint and someone up there lecturing for 3 hours, how do you really get people involved? And what are some of those things that you're doing that have really made an impact?
It's interesting. It's a fight because people are so used to having a PowerPoint. I would say the companies are. You have an agenda, like from 8 to 10, you cover this. From 10:30 to this, you cover that. What we've done is we kind of go organically. We have a conversation about what you've learned so far, or what you know so far. And then we build on the conversation and we pull things out that are needed for the conversation. Goal is not to have an agenda. The goal is to know everything we need to cover between this date and just make sure we cover it all. And we make sure that they teach us what they are picking up. And so we use third-party validation. Google is a great friend when it comes to learning, but then how do they learn? Do they create visuals? We have a group that likes to create visuals, then you create the visuals. Those who like to create words and do lectures, then you guys create the lecture. And we'll have you both do presentations to each other, and we'll make it a game. And then we separate and do like a challenge on recall. And so we did training in a whole different way. And what you found is people engaged. They want to know more. And you see them going home and sharing with their friends, just like kids did when they came from school. Hey, guess what I learned today? So it's been a lot of fun.
Well, and I think when you have that shared experience and when people have to then explain it back to other people, you really know, did they learn it or did they not learn it? Instead of, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a training session or something, and everyone's like, oh yeah, hey, I get it. And then they leave, and the next day they can't even apply it. That's not learned experience. I mean,
well, we do the same thing with loan officers. We teach them a product or we teach them something, and we just talk to it. But the brain can only handle literally 15 to 20 words they retain. So think about it. If you talk for 20 minutes, I'm only going to hear 20 words. We use only 5% of the English language, and we repeat the same things over what we hear. So what we do is we repeat what we know, I should say. So what happens is I'm listening to words I know, and then I resonate with that. But everything you try to teach me, it goes out the window. So we have to understand learning is different. We have to understand what engagement is, and we have to understand that it's not about the presentation or the pretty PowerPoint. It has more to do with getting people to want to know more, and that's the key.
How does storytelling come into play, especially from a retention perspective? Talk to me a little bit about that, because I know if you can tell a story and you can engage people and really have them kind of believe and see that passion, a lot of times I find that there's higher retention. What's kind of your feeling on that?
100%. We do that too. I didn't bring that up, but storytelling is great. What we do is we try to find analogies. Like I'll use a silly one right now. Wholesale versus retail. So we had them go in to look at Alibaba. You know Alibaba is, you can go and it's like from, you can literally go there and see, you can buy a mug for 13 cents. And so I have them go to Amazon and find the exact same mug on Amazon for $29.95. So we say difference between wholesale retail, right? So we have them, we tell stories. So how did you experience a wholesale retail experience? And so people will say, well, I bought this and then I sold it for that, or a yard sale. We talk about how that's a wholesale retail thing. So we use a lot of stories and we find things that they can relate to that makes sense to their world. And, every culture and religion did the exact same thing. Everything's in storytelling because you find yourself in the story. And so I 100% agree with that.
Where do you think things are kind of shaking out through the rest of the year? I know neither one of us has a crystal ball, but what are some of the things that you're looking forward to or leaning into? What are some of the things you're kind of waiting to kind of see what happens? Give me some kind of perspective from that standpoint.
To be completely honest, I don't think about it. I really don't. But if I had to think about it right now, I think about what's in front of me today, because my predictions are always going to be worry by nature, because everyone's saying, we have a storm coming. And I do believe there's going to be a storm. But every storm, there's also sunshine at the end of the tunnel, right? There's always going to be that. So I think we're going to hit some rough patches. I really do. I think the market, we already hit a refinance drought. So those who leaned in that really are struggling right now. But I think we really have an opportunity to kind of reset our brand, personal brand, who we are, our market, and those who really want to push through it. I just think that's going to really separate the lion from the sheep, and really figure out who wants to be in this business for the business, or who's looking for just money so they can just feel comfortable, because it's not comfortable right now. So when people don't feel comfortable, they're going to find something that is comfortable, whether it be Uber driving or, working someplace else. They're going to find something that makes them feel comfortable. So I think this is going to separate the sheep from the lions.
That separation, I think, is so critical. You find who the pretenders are. When it was easy, when loans were flying off the shelf 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, everyone just got in to make a buck. And they didn't focus on the relationship. They didn't necessarily follow the right process, methodology. The ones that do, in my opinion, this is a great market. They can lean in, they can grab market share. And I think in tough markets, it's easier to differentiate yourself than in markets where there's tons of loans just flying off the shelves.
I do want to say something about that too. Here's a really big issue and opportunity. We have some really bad practices in our industry. We throw things over the wall, and then people suffer for it and work extra hard to make loans work. Now is an opportunity to really think about your SOPs, systems, operations, and processes, hold people accountable. Who are the 20% that are really driving your business, and who are the 80% that are kind of half-assing it, if you will, just doing half the job, and really start leveling out the playing field and go look and measure people's success by their efforts. And if we can really look at our process and go, how do we fix the process so we're working like a ship? Because if there's a hole in a ship, it doesn't matter if you're the captain or the cook. It's sinking. So,
I love that. That is a great one. I will have to use that, and I'll give you credit for it.
Thank you. But it's like the honest statement is our industry is that's not my department. That's not my role. And what happens is you're ignoring the hole that is bringing water into your ship, and it's making your ship go down slowly without really taking ownership. And I think Star Trek is a great analogy of that. You have different opinions. You got different personalities. Spock and Kirk are two different types of people. But they knew enough about the whole ship that if something were to happen, they could step in and do it. But they also respected the people that knew it. They respected Scotty, who were the engine guys, right? But they still can go there and fix it if they had to. And we need to have the same philosophy. We need to know enough about our industry and each department and how it works. And we need to come together and design a process that's going to work for the betterment of the business, not just our department.
I couldn't agree more. So let's talk a little bit about technology's role. We're on the Fintech Hunting podcast. We always like sprinkling in some technology. What is technology's role in improving the mortgage process, in really looking at and tracking who are those top 20%ers? What's the issue with the other 80%ers? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I think technology is great, but there's so much to choose from. And all of it's trying to fix everything. I think one thing technology does, like we use technology, and I'm going to be very honest. I'm not going to say who, but we have a lot of different products. And when they come and tell us about what they do, they tell me everything, like the whole kit and caboodle. And I'm like, I just want to know what I need to know. I don't want to know how it does this, but I need to know enough so I can get started with it, because once I start playing with it, then I'll have more questions. But what happens is, going back to training, technology comes in and says, here's what we can do. And they give us a rundown for an hour and a half of all the perks when they've never really assessed what the perks we need at this exact moment. So I think technology needs to be pointed. We need to make sure that we find ones that are going to work not just in one area, but how it affects the others. And I think that the challenge we're faced with is that technology can come in, but we don't bring in the other parts of the ship to see if it's going to impact that too. And I think technology needs to be cognizant of that and not just invite the person that leads that department, but make sure everyone comes to the table and we take time to really vet it through versus just, like the bells and whistles.
I think that vetting process is one area that people struggle all the time. And some of the technology providers that are listening to this are going to cringe when I'm like, when people ask me, well, Michael, what software do you recommend? I'm like, one that you will use and one that fits your business situation. So I could recommend the greatest solution in the world. And if it costs $1 million and you have $1,000 budget, that doesn't work. Vetting, though, is very critical. And I think one of the mistakes a lot of people have made in vetting is, oh, give me a list of your references. If 20 other lenders are using it, it must work. Well, it doesn't mean it works for you and your situation and how you do business and how you manufacture loans. So I love how you talk about bring other people in the vetting process who are actually going to use the system and walk through and say, show me how your system would work with how we manufacture a loan, how we underwrite a loan, how we process a loan. And it may be referred by 20, 50, 100 other companies, but if it doesn't work for your situation, it's not going to work.
Let me add another caveat to that. Bring in your front line, your best frontline people in it as well, because they know more about the fight than you do. We have a concept of the fight, and we look at the end result. We look at the closing and the production, but the temperament that it took to get there is what they know. And so you bring them into that vetting, they're going to give you detail that you had no idea to think about. You're not looking at it from that perspective. And when you do that, that builds your culture as well. So you're knocking out two birds with one stone right there, because you're creating a value add for somebody who's in the fight with you, and you're bringing them in. The rest of the team knows about it, that this person's in vetting the program that we're trying to bring in for the company. That's career pathing, that's culture development, that is really getting true data that you need to get that the right skill set for the business.
I love it. I mean, you and I could continue to talk forever. One last question. You mentioned personal branding. Talk about the importance of personal branding and how do people align with the corporate culture up here, but still bring out their unique personalities, their unique methodology. How do you balance corporate culture and personal branding?
Branding and marketing are two different things, right? So you have a certain brand. My brand's neuroscience, NLP, I really get into that science. I know that if I wanted to do videos on a weekly basis, it'll be that. And I would use my personal stories on why that is. For instance, I used to be a fighter. And, some people say I mumble a lot. And my pronunciation, well, I lived with a mouthpiece in my mouth my whole entire life. So when I speak like that. So sharing your brand is really sharing your personal story behind why you're you. So if I was to share that story, and give pictures and show video and show, hey, this is what I look like, have a big mouthpiece in my mouth. Now you can see why I mumble a little bit. It's like you can see why my pronunciation might be a little different. And then people say, oh, and so people, when they have a why, they accept you better. And I think understanding, giving your why is not being professional, but giving the why to why you are who you are is your brand. So I have a lady I'm working with right now. She's a single mom. She's a mortgage mom. And so her brand is working with divorcees, single mothers, people that really focus on the fact that, hey, I'm doing this alone now and I have to be a fighter. And she's showing how she does it. Her picture is her holding her baby, working on her computer and saying, I'm still going to get it done for you. That's really her brand. And so she's holding on to that. And so we need to really be comfortable with sharing our personal, pain points or issues or cracks, because that makes people feel comfortable because they have cracks of their own.
I love that. And I think what's so critical there is having a corporate culture and a personal brand are not mutually exclusive. They should be fully intertwined. And like you said, that was such a great example of the mortgage mom. She can still do mortgages. She can still provide for her family and do what she needs to do for her kids and really produce some incredible results. Julian, you always have so many great insights, Tell me, what are you excited about? How can people get a hold of you if they want more information about all the incredible things you're doing at EPM? What's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I took that F period off, so you can just type in Julian Sado. So you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me at jsado@epm.net. That's the best way to get in touch with me, or just Google Julian Sado. I'll show up on your podcast and a few other things.
Julian, thank you so much for being a guest on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Good to see you.